Okay, now let's set up our grid. So as we've seen from question 6, basically we're going to have 3 big shelves. We're going to have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then within those we can have from 1 to 3 films. So that should be enough. So here we have our Thursday, our Friday, and our Saturday. When in doubt, make the maximum number of spaces. You can always get rid of them. Therefore, each of these days can have up to 3 films on them. And again, one thing that's interesting about this game is, as we can see from going through question 6, here it does actually matter what order they're coming in. So in one sense, this really is just a linear 9-slot game almost, where you could think of it as Thursday morning, afternoon, evening, etc. But not exactly. Anyway, let's look at these clues and diagram them so we can work with them with this grid. So we've got Greed, Harvest, and Limelight. We'll just mark down our pieces there. And each film is shown at least once. I think we'll just keep an eye out for that. On each day, at least one film is shown. Films are shown one at a time. These are all basically boilerplate clues, the sorts of things that, if they didn't say, that would be a very interesting and disturbing game, but you don't really necessarily diagram. So here we go. On Thursday, Harvest is shown and no film is shown after it on that day. So that's really easy. All we've got to do is say, well, we can always say Harvest is the last film on the day. And if it turns out that there's only one film, we can black these out. Or if there's 2, we can have the other one there and black this out. And so I'm putting it down 4 times just because these are going to be different possibilities, and H is there in every single possible possibility. On Friday, either Greed or Limelight, but not both, is shown, and no film is shown after it on that day. So we know, and there's basically 2 ways you could go here. You could either put G/L down the line, just like we did with H, but I would probably hold off on that and put a little G/L up here just to remind me. What you can also get from this, though, is that, of course, you can't have... if you have G, you don't have L. If you have L, you don't have G. So basically, the only other film that you could have on Friday is H. And because the only other film you could have is H, the maximum number of films you could have is 2. And so one useful thing about sort of having these numbers converted into spaces, as we do here, is that you can just get rid of that, and it becomes much more apparent what you can and can't have. And this is getting a little clunky. I might move the F out of the way here. But basically what I can mark down is that this might be H and this is G or L, and that's that. And that allows me to think about it in a less abstract way, where it's just, here's the piece that could go here, here's the piece that could go there. Again, I could fill this in down the line, but that would get a little noisy for me. And then on Saturday, either Greed or Harvest, but not both, is shown, and no film is shown after it on that day. Basically there I can do the same thing. So let me get this Saturday out of the way. And if I have Greed or Harvest there, then I could have L here, but I can't have anything there. And again, the key to this, and what makes it a little different from what I was saying earlier about, say, Thursday morning, afternoon, and evening, is that these spaces are all just sort of relative to each other. In other words, I could have just as well blacked out the last one, put G, L there, put H there, and it would have meant the exact same thing. All I'm depicting to myself here is that there are a maximum of 2 things, and they're going to come in this particular order relative to each other. So there's my diagram. Now the question is, are there deductions to be made? Am I neurotic enough that having a Thursday down there with Friday and Saturday up there is going to bother me? Yes. Do I want to branch? These are the questions that we are confronted with. So I'll deal with the last one first. Do we want to branch? Well, maybe, maybe not. Probably not. That last game... sort of was one that was so easy that it was worth branching in that you could just sort of slap down everything that happens and then hit the questions. This one's going to be a little more muddled. We have at least 4 possibilities just with the GL, GH flipping back and forth, and then you have whether this is or H or L is going to affect other things. It seems like it'll be a little fuzzy. So the cost of branching is higher than it was on the previous game where it just seemed very, very limited. Then you can look at the questions, and that's where the sort of benefit side of the equation comes in. The worse the questions are, the more benefit we get from branching because we don't have to keep doing the same vague work over and over. So question number 7, for instance, which one the find cannot be true, is the kind of question that might push me towards branching a little just because it's so vague. However, if I look at 8, 9, and 10, they're not fantastic. They're not totally specific in terms of what they're telling me if this happens. But they give me something to go off of. They give me something fairly solid to go off of. And so my basic verdict would be I would just leave it like this and work through the questions. Now, if you were to branch, there's really 2 different ways you could look at it. You could, you don't want to split anything up more than 4, maximum 5 or 6 in rare circumstances ways, because it just gets way too confusing and not worth it. But you could split it 4 ways again against the GH, GG, etc., or you could even split it up by is H here or is this shaded in, which would at least sort of get out of the way a lot of the numerical deductions. Again, if you do that and you're really good at branching, you might even save a small amount of time if you're really good at branching. But this is a game where it's possible, but by no means necessary. So let's just go to the questions.